we're now transitioning to starting to talk a little bit more about work that is being done in through both InterVarsity and also through Crew. And so the first talk is by Eliana Land on student ministry during COVID and Black Lives Matter. Eliana is a senior resource developer and team leader with InterVarsity USA, serving with the Evangelism department. She has over a decade of ministry experience in the San Francisco Bay Area, training students to do successful campus ministry and coaching them as young evangelists. Her role in the Evangelism department is to accelerate their best projects and resources for national use. So that being said, go ahead, Eliana.
Thank you. Yeah, I started out with InterVarsity as a campus staff member at Stanford University, and I live in San Francisco now. So this area, this location of ministry is just near and dear to my heart. I think it is a strange time to be doing ministry with college students right now. Let me share my screen here. I think this is a strange time because we're in the middle of a pandemic that's shaping this entire generation in a crucial time of development in their lives. Colleges and universities around the world are asking how to best help students develop and connect with one another in these extraordinary times. And Christian college ministers like myself are also asking this. If you don't know much about Gen Z, here are some interesting characteristics of Gen Z, of today's college students. These are pulled from people who are ages 13 to 18 years old in the US in 2018. Over half of Gen Z uses screen media at least 4 hours a day. They are psychologically more vulnerable, meaning than other generations, meaning that they report greater levels of comparison, loneliness, image management, anxiety, online bullying, and there are increasing rates of depression and suicide in this generation. Only 4% have a biblical worldview, so they are the least church generation. And more than ever before, we need different ministry approaches to share the gospel with Gen Z. And in the midst of a global pandemic, this need for new ministry methods increases even more. Because if Gen Z is becoming less interested in God and less interested in doing typically Christian activities, it's really worth asking, what are students already doing or interested in? And how can they encounter God in that space? In the last few months in my organization, we've been paying close attention to these questions and paying close attention to students' hobbies and interests, whether they are video games or Russian literature or baking, writing music, or turning trash into treasure. And while students have a lot of different interests, nearly all the students we've been talking with have been thinking a lot about and caring a lot about racial injustice and the Black Lives Matter movement. They're either protesting in the streets, they are wading into social media activism, or they're just nervous about having honest conversations with the people they're living with. And we're going to zoom in on one such Gen Z student. This is Destiny, and I want to tell you her story from the last few months. So Destiny is a 20-year-old college student from California who likes to dance to Korean pop music in her free time. She started meeting with friends over Zoom to learn K-pop choreography together. And that was a lot of fun. So she wondered if she could also have deeper conversations with people after dancing, like if they could share with one another how they're really doing in the midst of everything. Then she wondered if she could have real conversations with people about race and justice beyond just posting on social media. So with our help, Destiny decided to try creating this space where people could bond over fun with K-pop dancing, and then have honest conversations about how they're responding to racial injustice in our times. Now, Destiny could have planned her event for just the Christians in her life, but she quickly realized that lots of her non-Christian friends also were interested in K-pop. They also liked dancing, and they were wrestling too with how to respond to racial injustice. And so Destiny invited them as well. And here's how she did it. She sent out this invitation. I'll just read it for us. Hi, everyone. How are you de-stressing lately? I've been enjoying learning K-pop dances, and I'd love to do this with others on Zoom. Join me in getting fit and having fun through K-pop dancing. I also want to discuss how we're all finding hope in the midst of all the injustice. Are you interested? And notice that she's inviting people to something fun and to something honest. After she sent out that invitation, as she was sending out this invitation, she thought about who she should send it to. And so she made a network map. She realized that she had 3 levels of relationships in her life. She had her friends, her acquaintances, and an outer circle of some distant connections. And Destiny knew that in each of these 3 levels, there were non-Christians who Jesus cares about. Destiny co-hosted her event with her friend Seth, and Seth invited people in his networks, and he posted an Instagram story. So in the first panel, he posted a song with the lyrics, and he said, "My brother shared this song with me and asked me to listen to it carefully." Right? So he let his Instagram followers also hear the song. And then he got honest. He said, "After listening to that song, it made me question whether God cares about racial injustice." And then if people kept clicking through this, then he asked the question, "Do you think God cares about racial injustice?" And people can actually vote, yes or I don't know. And then he ended with, "I'm starting a discussion group about the spirituality of racism. Would you like to join?" Sure, no thanks. Seth did this, and within a short amount of time, he saw that 200 people saw his story on Instagram. Around 35 engaged with it in some way, meaning they voted. And 9 of those people he knew to be non-Christians. So he followed up with each one of these people in order to try to have a meaningful interaction with them on Instagram direct message. And then he invited them to his event. And so this is what Destiny and Seth have been doing in the last few weeks, inviting people into their event that features K-pop dancing and honest conversations about race and injustice. So here's one of their meetings. Destiny and Seth launched their event. They danced to K-pop, and afterwards, while people sat down drinking water, Destiny asked everyone how they were doing and how they were finding hope in the midst of all of the injustice. And she shared honestly about herself. This was her story. "I've been a mix of feeling numb and feeling overwhelmed by all the strong emotions stirred up by racial injustice. I got to a point where nothing was helping me, so I went to Jesus in prayer. Jesus helped me feel less paralyzed. He led me toward community for support in processing my emotions. I felt more encouraged to take action." She shared this story, and then she shared this image. And she said, "I've also been reflecting on this piece of art that's been stirring up some hope in me in the midst of all the injustice. What grabbed you from this image?" So if you look at this piece of art, let me just orient you. On the left are reactions to racial injustice. Hope is on the right, and Jesus is in the middle, breaking the chains of oppression. This piece of art has resonated with every college student I've talked to. It helps them have honest conversations about racism and deeper spiritual realities. At Destiny's event, after her friends became intrigued by this preview of the art, She invited them to explore the art further and also look at the scripture. So here's the scripture. She said, I'm hosting a group of students to look more deeply at this art piece and the quote by Jesus that inspired it. If you consider yourself spiritually curious or open, I'd love to hear your perspective. Are you interested? Okay. And through an invitation like this, her friend Jordan decided to explore Jesus with her through Bible passages. And this is Jesus's mission statement from Luke 4 here. I'll just read it for us. The Spirit of the Lord is on me because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim freedom for the prisoners and recovery of sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. Jesus said, today this scripture is fulfilled in your hearing. After a couple weeks, Destiny's friend Jordan made a decision to follow Jesus for the first time. It was very exciting. She could hardly believe that God used her hobby of K-pop dancing to spark honest conversations about racial injustice and Jesus with her non-Christian friends. There are many other students like Destiny who we are working with this fall, and these students are connecting their hobbies and interests with their faith in new ways. They're experiencing God breaking into their world and their social networks during a pandemic. Jesus is empowering these students to live lives of faithful action, and this gives me hope today. So if you want to connect with our ministry of hopeful action and hopeful sharing of the gospel, I'd love for you to go to this form and leave your contact information here. Or if you want to try out some of the approaches that Gen Z college students are using in order to share their faith, you can also leave your contact information and we'd be happy to give you some options for next steps. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Eliana. Really love the combination of K-pop dancing and discussions about Jesus and racial injustice. One question I have for you is, are there, Zoom, et cetera, social media, they're avenues that probably Gen Z is more comfortable using and it is a key way to connect during a time like this. Are there also things that are harder to do in light of the pandemic that would normally have been done? I think that's a kind of a broad question. But...
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there are lots of things that we used to do on campus that we are no longer able to do. So we're trying to move all of our ministry online, and we're using things like Zoom and Instagram and other kinds of social media to engage with students where they're at.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, well, I think I'm gonna check on some of the other comments that are coming up on YouTube and Facebook. All right, well, I don't see any, at least as of now, I don't see any additional questions, but I just want to say thank you for sharing the work that you're doing. It was really great to hear about.
Yeah, you're welcome.